Now then, having spent some considerable time studying the Qur'an and the Hadiths, I have come to a startling conclusion. Now, this may offend a lot of people out there, and you'll have to bear with me, but I have concluded that the great Prophet Mohammed was in fact gay. That's right, gay. Now, that may seem absurd to some of you and downright offensive to any Muslims watching this video, but I'm going to back it up with evidence. I'm going to go through several points. Each one on its own is not in of itself proof of Muhammad's homosexuality, but together they build up a picture of Muhammad's personality and his psyche. We can build a psychological profile of him. And all these points combined can lead only to the conclusion that Muhammad was indeed gay. Point 1. Muhammad preferred the company of men. Now, at first, this seems silly. Men do tend to have more male friends and women tend to have more female friends. But with Muhammad, this goes much further. Muhammad supported segregation of the genders. For prayers, he didn't want them anywhere near the men. He's quoted in the Hadiths saying, "The best place for prayer for women are the innermost apartments of their houses, not with the men." It's also recorded that Muhammad ordered mosques to have different entrances for women and men, and commanded that after evening prayer, women must leave the mosque first, so they don't have to mix with the men. In other words, I don't want to walk into the mosque with women. Muhammad didn't want to associate with women. It's almost as if he didn't like them. Which leads me on to the next point. Point 2. Muhammad didn't like women. Throughout the Qur'an and the Hadiths, Muhammad makes it clear that women are inferior to men and are to be treated in that way. Surah 2 of the Qur'an says that men are a degree above women in status. And Surah 4 reads, "Men are managers of all the affairs of women because Allah has made the one superior to the other." That's not very nice. Surah 4 also goes on to inform us that women can only inherit half as much as men, and that women's evidence in court is only worth half of that of a man's. Muhammad justifies this reasoning when he's questioned by a woman as to why is this so, and he replies, "This is the deficiency in her intelligence," i.e., a man is twice as smart as a woman. Further, in Surah 4, we learn that man is more perfect than the woman in creation and intelligence, and that a woman is deficient in intelligence and of great lust. That's right, ladies. You can't be trusted because you're all just full of lust. The Hadiths also tell us of women that Allah made her stupid. Why did he do this? He did this because of the sins of Eve. And interestingly, it tells us that hell will mainly consist of women, whilst heaven will be full of men. Muhammad even wants to only associate with men in heaven and eternity. The Hadiths also tell us that it is the responsibility of men to keep their wives in check and obedient to both the men and to Allah, even encouraging their beatings. In fact, they mention the beating of wives on many occasions. Muhammad's contempt for women goes even further, as he says that women are easily replaceable. Easily replaceable. They're nothing, just commodity. So it's now clear that Muhammad despised women. He didn't want to associate with them. He didn't want to see them outside. And in the next point, he didn't even want to see their bodies. Part 3. Muhammad didn't want to see women's bodies. Muhammad didn't want to see women's bodies, and where possible, not even their faces. Surah 24 of the Qur'an orders women to hide their charms and adornments from all men save their close family. Surah 33 orders women to cover their bodies, as this will protect them from being abused. That's right, women bring abuse on themselves, and it's the man who is the victim. Muhammad's wives had to go even further. In the Hadiths, we see that they had to cover their faces as well. This is why a number of Muslim women today cover their faces. It's not a religious requirement, but they do it in emulation of Muhammad. Muhammad clearly did not want to see his wives' faces or bodies. They must have been repulsive to him. So now we know some of the truth. Muhammad has a deep hatred of women. He finds their bodies disgusting, and he wants to avoid associating with them wherever possible. He prefers the company of men. Part 4. Strict laws against homosexuality. The strict laws against homosexuality in Islam are well known. Islamic countries kill homosexuals by either stoning them to death or throwing them to the deaths off tall buildings. Surah 7 of the Qur'an tells us that homosexuality is an abomination and must be severely punished. Muhammad says, "Whoever you find doing the action of the people of Lot, execute the one who does it and the one to whom it is done." Pretty damn clear then. Muhammad himself kills homosexuals by throwing them off buildings. Psychology has a term for this behaviour: compensating. A study in Scientific America warns that homophobes should consider a little self-reflection, as it found that often people are threatened by gays and lesbians because they are fearing their own impulses. In a sense, they doth protest too much. It found that people in denial about their own sexual orientation, perhaps a denial fostered by authoritarian and homophobic parents, may feel a threat from other gay and lesbian individuals. Lashing out may ultimately be an indicator of the person's own internal conflict with sexual orientation. This suggests that these people are victims of repression. This can often be seen in high-profile anti-gay public figures who are later discovered participating in homosexual acts. Clearly, Muhammad's extreme reaction to homosexuality was a case of compensation. He was lashing out due to his own internal conflict with his homosexuality. Part 5. Muhammad's many wives. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will be shouting out, "But Muhammad had lots of wives and children." Yes, he did. Again, psychology has a term for this: over-compensating. He is deflecting his homosexuality by saying, "Hey, look at me, I'm so straight that I need many wives to fulfill my straightness." He's taking his compensation to extremes. This in itself should be a red flag. Also, it's common knowledge that one of his wives, Aisha, was only 9 years old. The Hadiths disagree about her age in consummation. Some say she was 9, others say she was 12. Either way, it's disgusting, to put it mildly. However, it does bring up an interesting question. Why? Why was Mohammed attracted to a prepubescent girl? Maybe it was because she hadn't yet begun to develop into a woman and was still boyish in her appearance. Still boyishly flat-chested, masculine, undeveloped hips, and probably a little plump. All very interesting in relation to Mohammed's true sexuality. Point 6. Mohammed was a cross-dresser. Now, not a lot of people are aware of this. Even though the Qur'an explicitly denounces cross-dressing, Mohammed was well known for it. There are several mentions of it in the Hadiths. Mohammed claims that inspiration has not come to me when I was in any woman's clothes but Aisha's. In other words, he wears his other wives' clothes too. He later repeats it, saying, "The revelation does not come to me when I am in the clothing of any woman except Aisha's." So when he's wearing his other wife's clothes, the revelation doesn't come to him. He knows because he's tried. There are even witnesses other than his wives to his cross-dressing. The Hadiths tell us that then the wives sent to the Prophet Zainab bint Jahsh, who requested permission from the Prophet to enter whilst he was with Aisha wearing her clothes. Later, he was asked why he wouldn't give somebody else, Uthman, the same permission. Mohammed replied, "Uthman is a bashful man, and I feared that if I gave him permission to enter in the state that I was in, he would not have finished what he came for." He was probably right. So, Mohammed enjoyed wearing women's clothes. He did it regularly, he was known for it, he dressed in all of his wife's clothes, and people even witnessed it. Weird that you never hear Muslims discussing this, isn't it? Point 7. Homosexuality on tap in heaven. Finally, another not often discussed issue. Interestingly, the same rules regarding homosexuality don't seem to apply in heaven. It is well known that martyrs for Allah enjoy orgies with virgins in heaven. But it's less well known that, as Surah 56 of the Qur'an states, and immortal boys will circulate amongst them. When you see them, you will count them as scattered pearls. Now this strongly implies that not all the virgins offered will be female, and that Mohammed and his male followers can finally indulge in what they've all craved for all along: boy sex. Well, that's all my points. As I stated earlier, each point taken individually, though interesting, is not actual evidence in itself. But when we take all these points as a whole and examine the profile we build, it's clear that Mohammed was indeed gay. His hatred of women, his disgust at their bodies and faces, his strong preference for male company, his evil actions towards homosexuals of his day, his compensation and his overcompensation for his secret sexual desires and his cross-dressing. If you heard any other man described in this way, you'd immediately presume him to be gay. The question is, how should Muslims deal with this knowledge? The Qur'an, the direct word of God, explicitly states that homosexuality is a sin. And it also states that Mohammed was perfect. This leaves a Muslim with two choices. One, they accept that Mohammed was gay and that either God doesn't hate homosexuals after all, or that Mohammed was a sinner and not perfect. Either way, one can only conclude that the Quran and Islam is false. Or two, they do what Muslims do best. They go, la la la, I'm not listening. How dare you insult my prophet? You're Islamophobic. Threat, threat, threat. Blah, blah, blah. Remember, all I have done is provide you with the evidence. Evidence from the Quran, the Hadiths, and psychology studies. Muslims need to ask themselves if they really want the truth, or if they are only interested in confirmation bias. Confirmation that they are in the right club. But there it is. Mohammed was gay. Deal with it.